to everyone. Very good evening to everyone, especially to Mr. Harpit, Aditi, and all my dear students. It's been a pleasure to really get an invitation from Global Insight, and when I went to the website, I was really enthralled by the work and the activities that they are undertaking. And my immediate plan of action was to put the proposal to the Vice Chancellor and discuss with him as to can we collaborate with such an organization. And he also probably took a day to look into, and he found that yes, I think we should go ahead, because the areas like governance and policy, artificial intelligence, sustainable development, international trade and economics, and international strategic studies that the organization is broadly dealing with. I think no student of law can ever think of divorcing from this topic or from this area of studies, because they are very, very essential to lawyers and to public policy. And when we look at the contemporary debates and problems existing across the globe, I'm putting it in a very broad frame. I think public policy, law, governance are all intertwined to such an extent that if we are looking at the sustainable development goals and if we want to achieve those goals, I think all these things are interrelated, integrated, and unless and until we don't have a platform where we can explore, debate, deliberate on such area, on such issues, I think we would be left much behind the race in terms of academia, intellectual inputs, policy making, policy writing. And immediately both me and my director believe that this is a wonderful platform for our students who can explore the various facets, not of law, but of interrelated areas, interrelated issue. And that's how I connected with Srishti, with Ishan, and with the whole team. And I think it's a privilege for Gujarat National Law University to collaborate with Global Insight Policy. And yes, this is the first step. And I'm sure, Arpit, we will have more space, more areas where we can explore collaborations in terms of research, in terms of discussion or workshop, and many such issues. So I look forward to this program and to future where we can collaborate and learn from each other, because that's how learning takes place. So I once again, on behalf of Gujarat National Law University, thank Arpit and the team for being a part of, for allowing us to be a part of this program, for providing their inputs or their platform for our students. And I'm sure there will be a lot for all of us to learn from this program. So once again, I welcome, although it's a virtual mode, but welcome to Gujarat National Law University, and we look forward to such activities. Thank you. So with this, I think we can open up the session. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It is absolutely our privilege to be interacting with you. And just a little bit of introduction about myself. And I think since we have about 19 to 20 students in the room, I would request each one of you to quickly introduce yourself. I'm going to introduce myself first. So I'm heading this think tank called Global Policy Insights. We are there in India, we are there in UK, we are there in the US. We are perhaps the first think tank coming from India going abroad. Usually it's the other way around. Yeah. And we run this fellowship called the Global Policy, Diplomacy and Sustainability Fellowship, to which I think all of you who are interested in public policy, diplomacy and sustainability, you should apply, because we get some of the top global leaders from the United Nations, judges from different countries, ministers from different countries and corporates to come in as mentors to train the next generation of youth leaders. And our cohorts are also usually comprised of people from 8 to 9 different nationalities. So you'll also get a chance to learn in an internationalist environment. Now, I did my Masters of Public Administration from Cornell University, and I'm probably the only non-lawyer in the room right now. And what I learned at the Masters of Public Administration program is that laws are extremely, extremely important, but they are not sufficient to bring about real social outcomes. Okay, so what I want to discuss with you, and after your introductions, we'll discuss how some of the laws, even though they are drafted very well, they look beautiful on paper, but they're not able to bring any sort of an impact on the ground. And how can we, with this knowledge, design better laws or improve the laws that we have to bring about more solid impacts on the ground? So that's a good, that's a prequel about what we are going to talk about. But before we jump into our actual discussion, I would want you to introduce yourself. I'm going to call out your names, and you could just quickly tell me what year are you in, where are you from, and if you have a particular expectation from this workshop. So I want to learn from you about that. And if some of us could have our videos on. Typically, when I'm teaching, physically, it's very easy, but online, if I'm not seeing anybody in front of me, it becomes extremely, extremely hard for me to speak to a blank wall. Okay. Otherwise I can just share a recording. So anyway, let me first invite Anushka Kaware. If you could introduce yourself, please. Anushka, we can't hear you. Let me look for Mahia Shah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mahia Shah.
Hi, Mahia.
I'm a third-year student at GNLU.
Okay.
And I was born in Baroda, but I was brought up in the UAE, in Dubai.
Oh, okay.
So I've shifted here for university, and the minute I saw the mail in my inbox, I was very excited to register for the workshop, because while I'm not very keen on practicing corporate law, though I'm in a university that, there's a lot of people here who want to do corporate law, I'm really interested in policy, public policy. So I hope I can learn something here and also look at certain career options or anything of that sort. So that are my
absolutely.
Thank you.
No, happy to help, Maya, and thank you so much for joining us. And happy to know that you're looking at public policy as a career option as well.
My pleasure.
Sunil Joshi. Sunil?
Sir, sorry, the name is a little deceptive. I'm not
sorry.
able to. I'm Shaili Joshi. It's my father's
Shaili,
name.
all right. Okay, okay.
Sir, I'm a LLM candidate at GNLU, currently in the second semester. And one of my friends is working at a public policy. It's not exactly a think tank, but they actually implement and help in governance and formulation of public policies. So,
oh, nice. Is that Samagra?
I exactly don't remember the name, but it's based out in Ahmedabad. I'm from Ahmedabad itself. So she keeps on talking about, how they have, let's say, helped the state governments, various such as Odisha and Gujarat, to formulate laws on a practical level and everything. So that's how I got interested into a little, bit of public policy. And after I started my LLM at GNLU, all these things came up. So I think I'm more interested in knowing and discovering policy making. So that's why I registered for this workshop.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Now let me ask Sarah.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm a third-year student at Gujarat National Law University. I'm currently doing bachelor's in social work with LLB. So I am from Missouri. And my interest from public policy basically stems from my work experience with Geographical Insights. It's a lab where I primarily worked on analyzing NFHS data to see the progress of the various schemes that we have. So I worked on Beti Bachao.
Okay. So you've
And
also got some exposure with sustainable development, etc.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And then I do have experience working with Project 39A. So there also I used a lot of I learned a lot about data analysis. So that is where that is what got me excited to attend this workshop.
Awesome. Thank you for joining in, Sarah. It looks like this is our crowd. Okay, Yashika. We can't hear you, Yashika. So while you try to come back, let me call Shrusti. Okay, Shrusti has message. Finally, a law student, GNLU. Okay, you're currently in the library. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, that's not a problem, Shrusti. Thank you so much for joining in. Chaitra.
Hello, good evening. My name is Chaitra. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm an LLM student at GNLU. I specialize in constitutional and administrative law.
Awesome.
I registered for this workshop because before joining LLM, I was a practicing advocate at Delhi High Court, and
cool.
I've appeared before the National Green Tribunal as well. So I have an interest in climate governance and environmental law.
Brilliant.
So this sort of got me interested in the workshop.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you for joining us, Chaitra. And I'm going to move a little quickly now. Shefali Gautam. Okay, Shefali, I don't know if she can unmute herself. Ansha.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Ansha, you are.
I am a third-year student at GNLU. I am interested in public policy, and I'm trying to dip my feet into as many public policy opportunities that I can get into right now, and figuring out what it looks like for law students and freshers right now. So that is why I'm here.
Thank you so much. I see a lot of law students interested in public policy, which is a great thing because you then know the best of both the worlds. Okay, Avni Verma. Okay, Delphina. I don't know if.
Yes. Hi, my name is Delphina. I'm a third-year student, and originally I'm from the northeastern state of Manipur.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined this session today because I haven't had much exposure on climate governance or environmental law. So I hope that today's session could give me some insight and see if I could like to culminate my interest on this area. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about climate governance today. Let me bring in Odisha, then Chris. Okay, Odisha has message in here. Chris, do you want to go ahead? Okay, maybe can't hear Chris. So Kushagra and Pranati.
Yeah, good evening, sir. I'm Kushagra Gupta, and I'm a second-year law student at GNLU.
Okay.
And currently, I'm in fourth semester studying Bachelor of Arts LLB. And in that, fortunately and coincidentally, I'm reading public policy, administration, and governance as a subject in BA. So this session thus interested me to register.
Awesome, awesome.
I hope to learn a different perspective there.
Looking forward to it, Kushagra. And Pranati and Dhanya. Okay, Dhanya, do you want to go ahead?
Dhanya, sorry, I'll allow her to introduce, but Dhanya is our colleague in the research department.
Oh, awesome.
And when I leave the session, she'll be taking care of the session.
Awesome,
But
certainly.
even that, Danya, you can introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. This is Danya, Assistant Professor Research from GNLU. Thank you.
So good to meet you, Danya. Okay, I think we're just left with Manoj and Priya. So Manoj, do you want to go ahead?
It could happen that many of them would be sitting in the library.
Sure.
For the reason that the temperature in Ahmedabad is 43 presently.
I can imagine.
And the classrooms are AC, but it will be shut now, so people prefer the library because it's AC. It's a
no. I can imagine. Certainly.
Yes. So
no, I understand. All right. So let us now jump into the topic. But before I do that, can I request at least 2 to 3 students to get their cameras on, because it's just going to be much easier for me, because what we are discussing really is typically not a super easy topic to explain. And if I can see some students, it just helps me a lot in explaining the topic. So if any 1 or 2 of you could just sacrifice on behalf of the whole of the group and bear with us with your video on, I would be really grateful to you. And if it is not possible at all, then at least I would want a lot of audio feedback, so that I at least know that I'm you are understanding what I'm talking about. All right, so that would be really helpful. Okay, now jumping in. Okay, so before we start, my question to you is, why do we not find a number of laws that are implemented? Can anybody, and I'll take maximum 2 responses, can anybody give me an instance of a law which is there, or an order by a tribunal which is present, but people still don't follow? Like, people still don't abide by that particular law. Can anybody give me an example? I'll take 2 responses. And Sarah, thank you so much for keeping your video on. Do you guys see laws being broken? Have you ever come across laws being broken by people? How many of you have bribed a traffic police person? Nobody? Okay. Yeah, because you're probably lawyers, so you don't do that. But have you noticed anywhere in your country where a law is there, but people don't really follow that law so much, or it is broken, quite frequently? Can you tell me an example of that? Let me ask Kushagra. Kushagra, can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Chat. Okay, let me see. Okay. So Kushagra, any law that you think, you have some examples on your screen right now, but just want to understand if you think there is a particular law which is not followed to a great extent. Sarah, how about yourself?
So there are a number of laws that are not really followed as they're supposed to. I mean, just a simple example that you gave of traffic rules itself. And then even in court law, like if we look at there's imprisonment for cashing a check where you don't have enough balance in your account, but then still the people don't really go to prison for that. So the practical realities of laws are very different from what they're
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you find, everywhere you find laws which are there on paper. Smoking in public, this is what one of our friends Manoj is saying. Traffic rules, they're broken all the time. Corruption happens still, not only in our country, but all of the countries. And most of the, countries have a law against corruption. Or you see all of this water pollution. Do we have orders from the National Green Tribunal that the industries should not be polluting the rivers and there are penalties if you do it? You do. And I know my hometown is a place called Firozabad. And if you drive from Delhi to Firozabad, at different places, you see the Yamuna River. And you see, and in fact, I was visiting the Taj Mahal a few days ago, and you smell a very bad stench coming out from Yamuna. Or if you look at the Yamuna River, you see that there's just so much dirt and so much waste and plastics, etc., just floating around in the river. You wonder, when did this river turn into a nala? And you wonder why, despite all of the laws, despite all of the penalties which are there in place for industries to not litter in the river or throw untreated waste in the river, why do we still have it? And the reason why we have it is because laws, a lot of times, they don't change people's games of life. So everybody, and today we are going to be essentially talking about this construct called game theory. This is a whole discipline of understanding how people make decisions. And game theory tells us that laws don't really change people's game of life. What is people's game of life? Human beings, and let me see, Kushagra is saying, I have had the same experience at Gomti Riverfront and Sabarmati Riverfront. Absolutely. People also contribute in the river pollution. People do that, exactly. And if you look at game theory, number one thing that you see as part of human behavior is rationality. So human beings, to a great extent, are rational. Now, obviously, the latest research says that we are not completely rational. We operate under bounded rationality. But even then, game theory works really well. Rationality simply means that we want to maximize our own benefits and we want to minimize our costs. Okay. Or, we want to maximize utility. We want to minimize disutility. Okay. That's rationality. The second thing is rationality being common knowledge. That's also very important for game theory. What does rationality mean as a common knowledge mean? That I know that I am rational. I know that the other player that I'm playing with is rational. Okay. I know that you know that I am rational. And I know that you know that I know that you are rational, and so on and so forth. Okay. So essentially, this is the common knowledge of rationality, that all of the players that we are playing with are rational. Okay. Now, when we are talking about rationality, think about policies such as when we had in India, when newly electricity meters were installed in various households. Okay. What were people doing? If you had an electricity meter installed in your house in India, early on when electricity was a new thing, and in fact, until much later in the 90s, what were people doing? People would put a magnet on the electricity meter. Why would they put a magnet on the electricity meter? So that the reading does not go up. The magnet would interfere with the electrical signals inside and the reading would not go up. So the government thought that giving electricity is a great policy and we'd be able to earn revenue and there'll be so many good things, industries, etc., moving ahead with, armed with electricity. But people would want to maximize their benefits and minimize the costs that they pay. And in order to minimize the costs that they're paying, what are they going to do? They're going to put those little magnets on the meter so that they can save on their electricity bill, which essentially goes on to say that when you are making policies, you're almost like in a game with people. Okay. you're almost playing a game with the people, and you're trying to understand that, okay, how will people's game of life change with this policy? And people will only follow your policy to the extent that it is in their benefit, or to the extent where they have no other option left. They cannot escape just to follow the policy or the law that you have, which means that you have great monitoring system or you have great design of that particular policy. Okay. The third concept which is required for game theory to function is equilibrium. Okay. Equilibrium essentially is a concept which comes from this scientist called John Nash in game theory. If you've watched the movie A Beautiful Mind, that's a great movie on this mathematician John Nash, who also won a Nobel Peace Prize and Nobel Prize in Economics. I've been fortunate to visit the Princeton campus and see where John Nash was living and roaming around, etc., etc. Now, equilibrium is a concept which literally states this, and if you can take notes, this is probably the only one thing that you want to write down, that a Nash equilibrium is those set of strategies. Okay? A Nash equilibrium is those sets of strategies from which no player would unilaterally want to deviate. Okay, I'm repeating myself. Nash equilibrium is those sets of strategies from which a player would not want to unilaterally deviate. Okay, now let me just explain to you what I'm talking about, because until now you might think that I'm giving you a lot of theoretical rationality as common knowledge, Nash equilibrium. What do I do with this on real ground? So let me give you first an example about Nash equilibrium, an example that would make Nash equilibrium extremely clear to you. So, and this is a story that Kaushik Basu, who was the chief economic advisor of India, he told me. He was my professor at Cornell, that at one point of time in India, giving bribes and taking bribes both were illegal. Okay, giving bribes was also illegal, and taking a bribe was also illegal. And some of the advisors of the government came together and they told the government that we should make giving bribes legal. Okay, taking bribes should remain illegal. By that one little change in the policy or in the law, as you can say, the incidence of bribery came down. Anybody has got the wildest of ideas as to why that happened? So earlier, giving and taking bribe both is illegal, but now only taking bribe is illegal. But that has reduced the incidence of bribery. Why?
Probably because people fear that they're being tricked into it, and the person who's giving them the bribe won't really face any consequences. So a police officer could be in disguise and could just be tricking them. So.
Sure, you're partially correct. But earlier, what was happening when both are illegal, both giving and taking bribes are illegal. So let's say, Sarah, you are a bureaucrat and I have some work to be done. Okay. Right now, we are in that stage where both giving and taking is illegal. Now, once I give a bribe to you, okay, then we both are in cahoots. Our interests are completely aligned together. Okay, because you do not need to fear that I will report you. Okay, because even giving bribe is illegal. So I would not do anything which is rationally against my own benefit, because I will also be behind the bars. But now what has happened is that I can give you a bribe, I can get work done from you, and I can still go out after my work is done. I can still go out and to the enforcement directorate or whatever intelligence agency, I can report to you that, okay, I had work, I gave bribe to this person, my work is done, but now you can catch this person because this person is a bugger. Okay. So now the thing is that earlier we were stuck. We had a great equilibrium where you and I both had different strategy. I had a strategy that I can report or not report, and you had a strategy that you can take a bribe or not take a bribe. Now, once a strategy set, which is for you, take the bribe, for me, don't report. Okay. In the earlier situation, we absolutely were aligned, and neither of us would unilaterally change our strategy. Okay. I had no, like, I would not unilaterally change my strategy from don't report to report, okay, because it's against my interest. And you would not change your strategy to not take bribe versus take bribe. You would still take the bribe because that's in your interest, okay? So since we are in that position where your strategy and my strategy will not change, nobody would unilaterally on their own would change their strategy. That's why it was called an equilibrium. Okay, similar equilibriums you find in the society when we are talking about what side of the road to drive on. Okay, so every country has, the government just plays a signaling role. The government just declares that we are all going to drive on the left side of the road, and it needs minimal enforcement to convince people that they should all drive on the left side of the road. Okay, because it is in everybody's, if I am driving on the left side of the road and the society is driving on the left side of the road, then it is in nobody's unilateral interest to start driving on the right side of the road, because then you're in for an accident. Similarly, if you're in some other country, let's say in the US, then if I am driving on the right side of the road and the society is driving on the right side of the road, then unilaterally, I have no interest to change my strategy to unilaterally start driving on the left, because it is against my benefit. Yeah, I'm a rational player. Okay? So left or right, either way, both are Nash equilibriums over here, because nobody would unilaterally change their strategy once they have started driving on one side of the road. So any policy, this is the fundamental of it, any policy or any law that nudges people towards a Nash equilibrium, okay, those policies are usually successful, they are adhered to. And any policy or law that takes people away from the Nash equilibrium, people will eventually just adjust themselves towards Nash equilibrium, even if it is illegal. All right. Now, the way that you model this earlier, left side of the road, right side of the road sort of a thing is, through this game theoretical table that you see. So this is just for you to understand how a game theory table looks like, because we're going to use that as our lecture proceeds. So essentially, the way this table looks like is that one player is here, another player is here. This player plays column. Okay, so this player has a strategy either to drive on the left side or drive on the right side. Okay. Similarly, there is another player over here. You can call it the society, or you could model it as just one separate player. This player plays rows. Okay, can play row 1, row 2, and row 1, row 2 for them happens to be left and right. Okay. What you see in blue or on the left side of the comma is the payoff or the benefit or loss for player 1. What you see on the right side of the comma in red is the benefit or loss for player 2. Okay. So essentially, it means that if I am playing left and the other player in the society is also playing left, then we get a benefit of 5-5 each, because we are reaching home safe. We are not dying. Okay. If I am playing right and another player is still playing left, because this is what I'm talking about. So I have changed my strategy to right, and the other player, people in the society, are still playing left. So they are still in this column while I have moved to this row. Then I get a -1, they get a -1, because we are in for an accident, right? If I am playing left and the whole of the society is playing right, then again we are in for an accident. Okay. And if both of us, if I am playing right and the society is playing right, then that's also a Nash equilibrium, because we both are doing just fine over here. Okay. Now, just to confirm that these are Nash equilibria, this game has two Nash equilibriums. Left is also Nash, right is also Nash. Okay. Just to confirm you can see that if you're here, would I unilaterally want to change my strategy from 5 to -1? I would not, because I don't, want to lose out. 5 is better than -1. Similarly, if we are here, then any person in the society, any random person in the society, would they unilaterally change their strategy from left to right? They would not, because 5 is better than -1. All right. Similarly, if all of us are driving on the right over here as well, I would not want to change my strategy from right to left if everyone is driving on the right. I would not want to do that because 5 is better than -1, and any given person in the society would not want to move from right to left because they would not want to go from 5 to -1. Okay. So essentially what that means is that no side is better as long as everybody has decided to drive on one particular side. Left, left, or right, right, they are Nash equilibrium. So a law that talks about, everyone is going to drive on the left side or everyone is going to drive on the right side, you will see a lot of people adhering to that law. You will see a lot of people just following it with minimal enforcement. You don't need a lot of police, etc., to ensure that people are driving on this side of the road. Okay. So a lot of times, laws are merely ink on paper because they are not pushing people to follow a Nash equilibrium. Okay, let me just look at the chat box. How did we choose the numbers 5 and 1? The numbers really don't matter over here. It could be 1 and -1 as well, and the story will still remain the same. Okay, 5, I just picked the number that, okay, that's the benefit that you receive for reaching safely at your home. Okay. And if you're driving, if you have an accident, then you could have a -1, -4, etc. As long as relatively the difference in the numbers is, one is bigger than the other, you're fine. Okay. So the numbers are arbitrary over here. Okay. So now the thing is that here is a game where you have good Nash equilibriums, okay, or good Nash equilibria. Right, right is also a good Nash equilibria. Everybody is happy. Everybody is reaching safe. Left, left is also a good Nash equilibria. There are many games, especially when you talk about public goods. There is not a good Nash equilibria. There is what we call a prisoner's dilemma that kicks in when we are talking about public goods. Okay. Before I talk about what's a prisoner's dilemma, and after that we'll play a little game. Okay. Does anybody know, or can anybody explain to me what a public good is? Or what do you think? You don't have to be precise with the definition. Just if you could, give me your initial thoughts, because I think there's a lot of confusion on what public goods are. So if somebody can tell me what, in their opinion, public goods are. And then I'll tell you a story about, I'll tell you 2 stories about public goods, and then we play a game. Come on, anybody, very quickly.
So in economics, we've studied that a public good is any service or commodity that is, it's basically for the good of the public, and it's almost always provided for free. So that is what I can recall about public goods.
Okay, and thank you so much, Maya. You're partially correct, but that is where the confusion really lies. Public goods essentially have 2 features. One is non-rivalry, another is non-excludability. Okay, what do we mean by non-rivalry? You have to have both to become a public good. Okay, so non-excludability means, so it doesn't matter whether a good is for the benefit of the public or not for the benefit of the public. Usually it is in the benefit of the public, but every good which is in benefit of the public does not have to be a public good. Okay, so any good that has these 2 features, non-excludability and non-rivalry, they are public goods. So non-excludability means that you pay for it, you pay for a good, you get it. You don't pay for it, you still get it. Okay, you don't pay for that particular good, you're still going to get the benefits of it. Just like having a national army, having a national military. You pay your taxes, the military is serving you. If you are not paying your taxes, then also you're fine. It's not as if tomorrow, if there's a crisis, the army is going to say that I'm not going to protect this person because they didn't pay their taxes. Okay, so you pay for it, you get it. You don't pay for it, you still get it. Okay, Or think of an electricity pole. If I come to your town and there is an electricity pole, now I don't give taxes to your municipality, right? So it's not as if when I step under, if it's a dark night and if I want to feel safe, that electricity pole is not going to shine its light on me. It's going to do that. So I pay for it, I get it. I don't pay for it, I still get it. So it is non-excludable. What do we mean by non-rival? Non-rival essentially means that my consumption of that good does not eat into your consumption of that good. Okay, so again, you can take the same two examples. National Army. So the safety that I derive from the National Army does not reduce the amount of safety that you would feel. Okay, or it's like sitting out in the sunlight. If I'm sitting out in the sunlight and I am deriving all of the nice vitamin C, D, etc., and you also come out and sit in the sunlight, it's not as if you coming out would reduce any of the benefits from the sunlight that I can get. Right, so it's non-rival. My consumption does not eat into your consumption. Okay, so any good, same logic is for the electricity pole. If that electricity pole is there, in your locality in the night, then this feeling of safety I derive from it does not reduce the feeling of safety that you also derive from it. So that's a pure public good. You have both of these conditions met, you have a public good in front of you. Okay. Education is not really a pure public good, okay, because you pay for it, you get it. You don't pay for it, you really don't get it, right? So educate, and your consumption of education, if there are limited seats, then your consumption of education reduces the amount of consumption that I can, the amount of education that I could have. Okay, so in fact, education, if you purely look at it, it's a club good. I'll tell you what a club good is. Okay. So these are the four types of goods. Public goods, they are both non-excludable, non-rival. Okay, so a lot of your things such as clean air, etc., they're all public goods. Okay, national defense, street lighting, because you pay for it, you get it. Don't pay for it, you still get it. Your consumption doesn't eat into anybody else's consumption. Common resources or common resource pools, as they call it. Okay. These are goods which are non-excludable, but which are rival. So think of it in terms of, let's say, some fishes in a particular pond in your locality. Okay, it's non-excludable. You pay for the pond, you get it. You can still go and fish over there. You don't pay for the pond, you can still go and fish over there. All right. But your consumption of the fishes is reducing the amount of fishes for somebody else. Okay, so it's a rival good. Okay. Potable water, the drinking water that you have, is also a rival good because only 4% of the global water is potable. Okay, so you don't have to pay for it to get it. Well, now you also have to pay for it because mineral water, etc., has come in, but you don't have to pay for it typically to get it. But your consumption reduces somebody else's consumption. So just like water has a regenerative cycle, fishes have a regenerative cycle. If anything has a regenerative cycle, you can quickly start thinking that could be a common resource pool. Okay, but the best way to look at it is that, is it non-excludable and rival? If these two things are there, it's a common resource pool. The third type of goods are quasi-public goods. These are also called club goods. Club goods are excludable, so they are excludable, but they're not rival. What does that mean? That you pay for it, you'll get it. You don't pay for it, you will not get it. But after you've paid for it, then your consumption doesn't eat into somebody else's consumption. So think of a toll road. Okay, you pay for it, you can get to the road. You don't pay for it, you don't get to the road. And your consumption, once you've paid for it, then you can drive also on full speed. Somebody else can also drive on full speed. So somebody else's consumption doesn't reduce your consumption doesn't reduce somebody else's. Okay, similar is for movie theaters, right? You pay for it, you get it. You don't pay for it, you don't get it. But after you've paid for it, you can just walk inside the movie theater, and your enjoyment of the movie does not eat into somebody else's enjoyment of that movie, unless you're throwing popcorns on them or talking loudly on the phone, which I would not recommend. Okay. Private goods, they are pretty common. We all know private goods are both excludable and rival, which means you pay for it, you get it, you don't pay for it, you don't get it, and your consumption reduces somebody else's consumption. Examples are the laptops that we are seeing over here. If there are 1,000 laptops which are produced by a company, and if I have consumed 500 of them, then you only have 500 of them to consume. And after I've consumed some laptops and the quantity available has reduced, its price will go up, right? So my consumption eats into your consumption, and you pay for it, you get it, you don't pay for it, you don't get it. So these are your pure private goods. These are the 4 types of goods. Are we clear about this? That, what are, anybody who has a question on what are these 4 types of goods? Because now we are getting to the core of the game theoretical work that we are trying to do. Okay. So the problem with this, with public goods, is that usually all of the public goods or all of the common resource pools, these are usually the nature related goods, okay, or sustainable development related goods. They fall into the right side of this graph. Either they're common resource pools or they're public goods most of the time. But now what we are seeing is that public goods and common resource pools are gradually turning into private goods. So whether you can talk about clean air. So if you're living in, let's say, Delhi, you are privatizing clean air because there's just so much pollution. Now you have to be, economically, sufficient, or at least in a particular segment, you have to be wealthy to be able to afford air purifiers in your room, okay, that suck out all of the carbon. It costs about 10,000 or 11,000 rupees. You have to be able to spend it to be able to breathe clean air inside of your house, right? Think about water. Like, I know in many places where the water has completely, you cannot just drink the regular water from the tap. So you would want to put an RO, okay? So you have to pay to drink water. And if it's even worse, I know there are some places in the world where people are only drinking packaged water, okay? So what has happened? Packaged water is again a pure private good. There are some funny examples as well. If you go on certain airports, they are selling clean air. What does that mean? And even on Amazon in certain countries, there are literally cylinders with a mask on it. And they'd say that we are selling air from the Himalayas, or we are selling air from Switzerland or the Alps. And these are literally clean air bars where you could pay and you could just treat your lungs with clean air for, $50 or something like that. Okay, so we are privatizing these public goods and common resource pools. And think about a scenario where all developing countries become so polluted because we are eventually developing countries are developing on the back of coal and fossil fuel and crude oil, etc., right? Renewables we have, but in a very small quantity right now. And a lot of times it's also expensive to transition into renewables en masse. Germany can do it because they can spend in that sort of a technology and transition into it. And India cannot probably do it. So imagine a time where we have developed as a country 10 years down the line on the back of all of these coal and fossil fuels, etc., etc. And we are living in extremely bad air quality levels. Even in the Himalayas, even in the northeastern states where air quality is supposed to be good. Now, let us imagine a time where in 10 years, we have burned so much of this fossil fuel that even there, the air quality is not so great. And now, if I am a person, let's say if I have some lung problem or some issue where in order to survive, I will have to live in a place which has good air quality, then I would have to move to a Switzerland, or I would have to move to some of these really developed countries to be able to breathe good air. Which means that I will have, and all of these countries are more expensive than India, right? So which means that I will be paying an extra amount of money to be able to breathe clean air. So I have made air from non-excludable. As a society, we've turned it from non-excludable to excludable. Okay. Once I'm there, maybe air becomes a club good, a quasi-public good, which means that once I'm in Switzerland, once I've started paying the extra amount of money that you need to live in Switzerland, then, you know, my consumption of the clean air does not reduce anybody else's consumption of the clean air. So it is still non-rival in many senses, but it's still become excludable, right? And why is this happening? Why are all of these public goods or common resource pools, they are becoming quasi-public goods or private goods? Why is that happening? It's literally happening because of this one property of excludable goods, which is you pay for it, you get it. You don't pay for it, you still get it. So most of the people, human beings being rational, would not want to pay for it and still get it. The ideal scenario for a human being is to not pay for something and still get the benefits, right? At an individual level, that's like the real best scenario. Okay, that's where the party happens. Okay, so gradually what's happening is that we are moving all of the goods to private goods. And let me give you a story, an imaginary story, to show you the trajectory of how it happens. Now, I used to teach at the San Francisco State University. This part is not imaginary. I actually was teaching comparative public administration over there, and I every now and then still visit and teach. There, I would come into the metro station after teaching, and inside of the metro station, it was an underground station, there's going to be this guy who's playing beautiful saxophone over there. He's got his speakers, he's got a hat in front of him, he's playing saxophone over there. At that point of time, his good, the music that he's playing, is a pure public good, because if I pay for it, I get it. If I give him a tip in his hat, if I throw in $1, I still get it. If I don't give him a tip, I am still getting it, right? I'm still able to enjoy his music. And my enjoyment of the music does not eat into somebody else's enjoyment of the music who's also standing on that station, vice versa. But let us say, for the sake of our story, that I am a greedy businessman. I don't want to stereotype. I don't think that all businessmen are greedy. But let's say that I am a greedy businessman. Okay. I want to make some money off of this guy. What am I going to do? I'm going to pluck this guy outside of that metro station, and I'm going to put him inside of a stadium and put tickets on his performance. Okay. So then I'm going to make this good a quasi-public good, where you pay for it, you get it. You don't pay for it. So from a pure public good, from being non-excludable, I've made it excludable because I've put some tickets on it. You pay for it, you get it. You can enter the stadium. You don't pay for it, you stay out. But once you're inside, then your enjoyment of the music doesn't eat into anybody else's enjoyment. Anybody else's enjoyment doesn't eat into yours. But let's say I'm further greedy. I want to make more and more money off of it. What do? I plug this guy even from the stadium, and I put him in a recording studio, and I publish, only 100 CDs of his audio. Okay. So I have also made this good from non-rival to rival, because with CDs, every CD that a person buys, there are fewer CDs left for another person. Let's say I'm also putting the advisory label that, you are not supposed to copy the CD and, just distribute it for free. You're not supposed to play it out in public for free, etc., etc. So what am I doing? I'm also converting this good into a rival good. And after 50 of those CDs are sold, the rest of the 50 CDs will become more expensive. So I've also made it a rival good. Okay. And similarly, you see that's happening with clean air, clean water, etc. That once I keep polluting it, once I keep polluting the clean air, once I keep polluting the water, I'm gradually turning them into, from a public good to something that you would have to pay for to access. So from non-excludable, I'm making it excludable. And then gradually we'll see it happening with water. We are already, with mineral water, we have seen it happening, that it's going to turn from non-rival to rival as well. So the Nash equilibrium eventually settles over here in private goods. Okay. And even for air quality, a lot of people are saying that, and for water, a lot of people are saying that let's just price water, let us price air, and then we can trade it as if it is a private good, right? Because that's where the Nash equilibrium eventually lies. And I think that that's a pretty bad situation. Okay, so this is a case where the laws will tell you that don't privatize water, or the laws will tell you that don't pollute water, but the Nash equilibrium will force you to make water, air, etc. a private good, because if a law asks you to remain here and the Nash equilibrium is here, then nobody is going to follow the law. Eventually, people are going to find a way to bring it over here. Okay, and then bribery comes into place. You even a lot of times bad policymakers are the ones who consider that bureaucrats or the police or the inspectors and enforcers are robots. They don't have a game of life of their own. They also make cost and benefit decisions. And that's the reason why a lot of times, some of the things that you're implementing, they never get implemented because the bureaucrats, Nash equilibrium does not lie with the law over there. So this is the part one of our story over here. Okay, let's do a quick time check. If there's any question regarding it, I'm happy to answer. We have 1 more hour to go, but this is really the foundational work. You need to understand this before we can go further. Okay. All right. So just raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have any question or thoughts. If you don't, I'll just move forward. Okay. So now let me show you that when we are talking about public goods or when we are talking about common resource pools, why is there such a bad Nash equilibrium? Why do we always fall into a Nash equilibrium, which is, suboptimal? Suboptimal means not ideal. Okay, the ideal Nash equilibrium is that you have a lot of public goods available. Okay, and everything becomes a private good is not the best scenario for the world. Okay, so why do we end up over there? And for that, we are going to play a game, and I want 2 volunteers to be playing that game. Sarah, I'm assuming one of them would be you because your video is on. I need 1 more volunteer. It's not going to take a lot of your effort. It's going to be all light and fun. So 1 more person who wants to play this game. Just raise your hand or unmute yourself. We will not be able to move forward unless we have another volunteer. So as quickly as we can get one, that'll be nice. Otherwise, we'll just keep staring each other. Or do you want me to pick one? Maya, will you be another volunteer for this game?
Sure.
Thank you so much. All right. So let's say Sarah and Maya, you both are chiefs of 2 tribes in the world. Okay. These are the 2 most there are only 2 tribes in this world. Okay. And in terms of strength, in terms of population, both of your tribes are identical. Okay. You both are the chiefs of those tribes. And now I bring you to this classroom. We are standing outside of the classroom right now. Inside of the classroom, there are 5 apples kept on a table, and there is a cupboard somewhere which has a knife kept, okay, inside of it. Okay, this is the scenario. Is that clear?
Okay.
Okay. These 5 apples are the sum total of all of the resources that you need in this world. So these 5 apples are the most important public goods which are available, or common resource pools which are available in this world. So think of these 5 apples as representative of the most important resources in this world. Okay. And it's critical to have control on these resources if you want to have any power in the world. Okay. Now, we are standing outside of the class. Inside of the class, there's a table on which these 5 apples are. Now, I invite you both to discuss as to how will you divide these 5 apples amongst yourself. So one can make an offer to the other person can accept or renegotiate the offer. Go ahead, guys.
Will you tell us what exactly the resources are, like the 5 which are on the screen? Like, what exactly are they?
So,
like,
okay, sure. I mean, these could be all of the minerals which are present, all of the food which is present in the world, all of the defense equipment which is there in this world, all of the potable water which is there in this world. So it's like all of the goodness packed into one.
Got it.
Okay.
And so can you also tell us what our tribes already have?
Your tribes, they're surviving on bare minimum. You're in a very early stage of this world. You're just surviving on the bare minimum. These are all of the strategic goods. Okay. And you both are identical. You both are absolutely identical in terms of the current resources that you have. And also, please remember, if one tribe has more resources than the other. So let's say Sarah has 3 apples and Maya has 2 apples. Then in international relations, you must have read about this thing, heard about balance of power. So if Sarah has 3 apples, then the balance of power is in Sarah's favor. Okay. And if balance of power is in Sarah's favor, then Sarah is going to be dominating Maya's tribe.
And so what about the people in our tribe? Do they have certain strengths and weaknesses?
Identical. Both of your things are identical.
Also, are we allowed to split the apple? Like,
you are allowed to split the apple, yes.
So I think, sir, in the ideal case scenario, in order to like avoid conflict, we would collaborate, find the knife and split it equally.
Yes.
So, okay. So let's say you're going to find the knife and you're going to split it equally. How many? So then you make an offer then. If you think that's the right thing, let's see if it works out. So Sarah, why don't you make an offer to Maya? And Maya, you can tell us whether you accept or you reject the offer.
Okay.
Maya, would you want to collaborate and find the knife and split the resources equally?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, perfect. So which means that Sarah, you'll keep 2.5 apples and Maya, you will keep 2.5 apples?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds good. Now, what you both are playing right now is the cooperate strategy. It is also called the dove strategy. Dove is the symbol for peace, right? The opposite of that strategy is the hawk strategy. Okay. Hawks fight. All right. Hawk strategy is also called the non-cooperative strategy or the defect strategy. Okay. So right now you're playing the dove strategy. My prediction is that by the time you would enter that room and reach the table, you would definitely play the hawk strategy, both of you. And after I explain to you the reason for that, you will agree with me. So let me explain you the reason why I think, even though you both have decided to cooperate right now, you both will not cooperate by the time you reach the table. Okay, are you up for it?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so you have decided to cooperate right now. Sorry for the gender stereotyping over here. I did not mean to do this, but can one of you pick one of these players? Who picks the one with the coat on?
I'll pick the one on the left.
Okay.
Okay, Maya, can you be this?
Okay.
All right, this is Maya, this is Sarah. Okay, you are cooperating right now. But now, let's say Sarah is going inside and Sarah is thinking that, what if, talks are cheap. We both have shook hands outside. But what if I'm walking in very coolly and trying to figure out where the knife is there in the cupboard? And in the meanwhile, Maya jumps onto all of the apples and runs away with all of them. Okay. That's a possibility, right? After all, you're a tribal chief. I mean, you have real people who are to whom you're accountable, right? And even Sarah is a tribal chief, so she cannot risk a situation where she's going back empty-handed. She's going to be killed by the tribes, right? So what if Sarah is walking in coolly in good trust that Maya is also going to be a dove, but Maya takes advantage and, you know, rushes onto the table and leaves with all of the 5 apples. You don't want to be in this position, Sarah, right? Or do you?
I would not.
It's unacceptable for you, right?
Yeah.
And similarly, Maya will also be having similar thoughts that, you know, talks are cheap. I know we have shaken hands outside, but what if I am walking in very coolly trying to figure out where the knife is, and Sarah decides to play hawk and jumps onto the table and leaves with all of the 5 apples. So Maya, you don't want to be in this situation, do you? Am I audible, guys, or have I broken off?
You are audible, Arpit. No, he's not.
Hi, guys. Am I audible?
Yeah, Arpit.
Okay. Okay. I see everybody stuck over here. All right. All right. Sarah, Maya, are you there?
No, okay, Sarah is back. Yeah.
Okay. And is Maya
Hi.
still there?
Hi, I'm so sorry. The internet.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That happens. I think Maya has dropped off. Okay. I'm still going to take Maya's example. Okay. Avni, in the meanwhile, can you play Maya's role?
Yes, sure, sir.
Perfect. Perfect. So, okay. So what's happening over here that Avni, you also don't want to be in this position, right? Where you have nothing and Sarah has all of the 5 apples, right?
Yes, right.
Now, what's the option that you both have? So you basically cannot eventually trust each other. You cannot be in a position where you can risk the other person to take advantage of you. Okay. Eventually, what you're going to do, therefore, is you both are going to play defect. You both are going to play the hawk game. And let us say if you both are playing hawk, then you enter into a scuffle. You literally just, fight each other. You throw in a little punches on each other and you destroy 1 apple in the meanwhile. Okay. So if you both play defect, let's assume that you will destroy 1 of the apples. Okay. That also happens in this thing in developing countries. There is this thing called the resource curse, that if you, especially in many countries in Africa, there's this concept of a resource curse, that there are countries with so many resources, but they're still not doing great. And the resource curse essentially is an example of this, where 2 opposing tribes, let's say they have oil, they have some of these things, but they fall into this Nash equilibrium. They are defect, which is a prisoner's dilemma over here. They both play hawk, and then other foreign parties also jump in. One is supporting one, another is supporting another. And, in that rivalry, some of them are, burning the other party's oil well, or the oil wells that the other party could, get a hold on. Others are burning the oil wells that you could get a hold on. So you're also destroying some resources in your competition eventually. Okay. Coming back to our story, my claim is that you both will play defect because you both cannot risk being in a situation where the other person runs away with all 5 of the apples and you have none of it. And since this is a one-shot game, you're just playing 1 round of it, there is no way for you to expect that the other person will keep their promise. Okay, there is no benefit for the other person to risk by being gentle and to risk the losing this particular game. If you look at it numerically, I'm going to show you. So there are two strategies available. Either you cooperate, okay, that's C, or you defect, okay, that's D. All right. Now let us say that, and I'm just going to write Sarah's payoffs over here. So let's say Sarah decides that I am going to cooperate irrespective of the fact what Avni does. Okay, I don't know what sort of a person is Avni. I am going to play the nice person, whether Avni cooperates or defects. Now, let us say Avni turns out to be a nice person. Okay, so how many apples does Sarah get if Avni also turns out to be a nice person and Sarah is also playing the nice strategy? Sarah gets 2.5, right? Oops. Yeah, 2.5. But if Sarah has decided to play cooperate only and Avni turns out to be a bad person, how much does Sarah get?
Probably none.
0. Right? And now, let us say, Sarah, you had decided that you are going to defect. Okay. You don't know Avni, this is a one-shot game and there's just too much at stake. So you are going to defect irrespective of what happens over here. All right. Now, if you are going to defect and Sarah turns out to be a person who's cooperating, then how much do you get? 5. All 5 of the apples. Okay. Oh, sorry. If Avni turns out to be a person who's cooperating, you get all 5 of the apples. Okay. And if Avni is also defecting, then you both have a scuffle, you both have a fight, you destroy 1 apple, so you get 2.
2.
Right? If you find out the average of apples that you leave with, which is called the average payoff for each strategy, you would find this, that if you're playing the cooperative strategy, your average payoff is 2.5 plus 0 divided by 2, that's 1.25. Okay. And your average payoff in the next strategy, if you have decided only to defect, is 5 plus 2 divided by 2, which is 3.5. Right? So given a scenario that you don't know what the other person is going to play, what is the more foolproof strategy? Which is the safer strategy for you?
So, but don't you think we're not taking into consideration the goodwill that I will establish with Avni if I play the corporate, if I cooperate with her? So in the future,
but it's a one-shot game. It's a one-shot game. What are you going to do with the goodwill when you're never going to be playing this game again?
I mean, we do have to coexist in the same world. Both our tribes have to coexist in the same world. So without goodwill, I'd probably have to waste a lot of these resources. The 3.5 that I have gained, I'd probably have to waste a lot of these resources defending myself, and that would be unnecessary hassle for my people. So why would I want to?
Agreed. And so what you're doing is that you're thinking like a leader who thinks about the long run. Okay. But if you are a leader who's not thinking like that, you're talking about infinite games. I'll come to that. Okay, you're talking about you both being infinitely there in the same world, and you have to deal with the other person nevertheless. But another way of interpreting it is that now you have a clear relative advantage over the other person if you have been able to run away with all of the 5 apples and the other person has 0, then your tribe has a clear advantage on the other person in existing in this world.
No, but don't you think that's also like very unpredictable when it comes to the world that we live in? We have natural disasters, we have pandemics, we have so many things. So like I cannot for certainty say, oh, I have this much wealth, I have these many resources, so I will survive in the end. And at the end of the day, like as a society, don't you think we have to like coexist? And no matter how many resources you have,
as a society you have to coexist. But in this particular game, I had given you an assumption in the beginning that all of the conditions are equal for you. All of the conditions. So if there's an earthquake, then you will lose some. Even Avni's society will also lose some. Okay, so I am using the ceteris paribus assumption over there that the rest is all the same. This is the only thing that your game is limited to these parameters that I've given you. So given these parameters, what's your most rational strategy? And obviously, I have to tell you, and this is something that my professor also told me when reading game theory, that don't draw the wrong lessons. Game theory is not teaching you to be selfish. Game theory, eventually, what I'm going to also talk about is that how do you get people to cooperate and not fall into a Nash equilibrium, which is a bad one, which is a prisoner's dilemma. So my question to you is, given this scenario only, which is the most foolproof strategy that you have, to cooperate or to defect?
Sir, I think it would be to defect because...
Absolutely. And for both of you, right?
Yes, sir.
So the thing is that when we are looking at games which turn into a prisoner's dilemma, okay, and in fact, if I I will quickly show you. I don't know if you've seen this movie. No, this video is not working right now. But if you've seen The Dark Knight, this Joker gets people to play a game where there are two ships, okay, or two yachts. One is full of prisoners, another is full of Wall Street business people, and the Joker announces that both of them have a remote for which the detonator is in the other ship. So if you press the remote, the other ship blasts off. Okay. And he says that if by 12 o'clock you do not press the detonator, I'm going to blast both of you away. Okay. And there, what they do eventually is that their action is irrational from a game theoretical perspective, because eventually they throw off the remote that they have because they realize that other people are not blasting us away, so we are not blasting them away. So they act in an irrational manner. But typically, if you look at the game theoretical way of things, Joker's plan was that, Joker assumed that human beings are purely rational. So, he thought that both of these populations will detonate the other. All right. That doesn't happen. Okay. Now, the thing is, and here is why, building policies and institutions become really, really important from a game theoretical perspective, is that all of your nation's fate, whether your nation is going to grow in its resources or your nation is going to, deplete its resources in internal wars, all of that is based on whether you are able to play more cooperative games in the society. So if there are more cooperative games, then you have a 2.5. Oops, what is that? Sorry about that. So if you're playing cooperative games, then you have more and more resources for the society. If you're playing defect games, then you're destroying these apples on a daily basis. And I realized that once, and that's that's a story after which we get into some more game theoretical simulations. I realized that when when I was studying at Cornell in upstate New York, that's okay. I saw your message. That's all right. I saw when I was, our college was up the hill and I used to live in downtown, and I'm coming down the hill and I see two cars just slam into each other. Okay. And I thought, coming from India, that there's going to be some road rage. I've seen people slapping each other, destroying the cars, or just wasting away a lot of their times in arguing. Okay. I know, incidences where a person has punched the other person in road rage and they lost their eye. So we have done all sorts of damages, to people in road rage. But over there, what happened was that the two gentlemen came out, they exchanged their insurance numbers, and they just went their own way. And I was like, what's that happening? Like, this is not supposed to happen, right? They must have taken a maximum of 10 seconds in doing that. And very happily, they went away. And imagine at a very micro level, they were able to, the faith in the insurance system or the design of the insurance system must have been so equitable and they know that insurance system is producing equitable outcomes, that they were able to prevent cooperation from breaking down at a very micro level. Okay, and imagine at a micro level how many thousands and lakhs of times the cooperation breaks down in our country in just road rage. At a macro level, you see cooperation breaking down between communities, cooperation breaking down between different arms of government, cooperation breaking down between government and businesses, etc., etc., etc. And Manker Olson has written a beautiful book. I would want to recommend that to you. He's written a paper called The Problem of Cooperation, and based on that, he's written a book called The Rise and Decline of Nations. And he talks about some more theories, which I typically take as part of my comparative public administration course at the GPODS fellowship, to which you all can apply for as well. But his essential idea is that nations which have a lot of cooperation inside, they rise, and nations that are failing on getting that cooperation going, they decline. Okay, because they are then destroying one apple every day. So over here, as you can realize, over here, defect in the game that you just played, defect is the Nash equilibrium. It's a suboptimal Nash equilibrium. It's a bad Nash equilibrium to have, but that is the only Nash equilibrium present in this game. Why is it the only Nash equilibrium present in this game? To check Nash equilibrium, imagine that you are at this position right now. Okay, so it's almost like, in a game, you are here, and then you are asked to choose whether you will unilaterally change your stance. So essentially, let's say Sarah and Avni, you have not distributed the resources right now, but you have written on a chit that you will going to defect because Avni is going to defect, and Avni has written that she will defect because you are going to defect. But now I come to you and I ask you that, will you unilaterally change your strategy? Avni will defect. Avni will still keep her strategy intact. Will you unilaterally change your strategy to from defect to cooperate? Sarah?
Yes, I would.
You would. If Avni has decided to defect, she is not going to change her strategy. Will you unilaterally change your strategy from defect to cooperate?
I personally think so. Like when it comes, if I do defect, I mean, if I change my stance, there I have a lot more to lose, because there'll be like an inherent dilemma that I wronged this person, and there's unnecessary chaos, and this entire distribution of apples will go on for days, and it'll just be so much chaos, unnecessary chaos. So like, I think I would want to side on. I would side with caution.
But given this game, just look at these numbers over here. Forget about the other things. Just if I am giving you this game over
yes, then,
here.
Then I wouldn't have any other choice but to defect.
But to defect, right?
Yes.
Sure. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So you would not want to go from 2 to 0 if Avni is going to stick to defect, right? Yeah. Similarly, Avni would not want to unilaterally change her strategy from 2 to 0 because 2 is just better. This is not an Nash equilibrium. If you both were cooperating, if you had, before playing the game, if you both had written on the chit, okay, you wrote that I'm going to cooperate, Avni wrote that I'm going to cooperate, and then I choose you, Sarah, and I tell you that Avni has no choice. Now, I will not allow Avni to choose any other strategy, but you can change your strategy. Okay. So given this game, you might consider changing your strategy because 5 is better than 2. You might consider, if Avni is stuck on cooperate, then you might consider that, okay, I can defect because I will get 5 rather than 2.5, which means that this is not a Nash equilibrium. Okay, so that's how you check for Nash equilibriums. All right. So now the thing is that if you are in a world where most of the Nash equilibriums regarding public goods are bad Nash equilibriums, okay, they are prisoner's dilemma. how do you bring people out of bad Nash equilibriums? So given this particular game, just focus on this particular game. What could you do to get cooperate to become a Nash equilibrium? What can you do to change in the structure of this game to make cooperate a Nash equilibrium? Let's say if this is the structure of the game, you come up with a law that everybody should cooperate. Okay, nothing's going to happen because the real Nash equilibrium lies over here. Defect. People are still going to defect. Just because you have a law, that doesn't mean people are going to change their behavior. So what will you do in addition? Let's say you still bring out a law, but in addition to that, what sort of, let's say, penalties or incentives will you give to the players so that they end up cooperating and cooperate becomes a Nash equilibrium really? Any idea?
So like if I understand correctly, I'm the one who's, I'm the one who's controlling the 5 apples, and I basically have to come up with rules so that both the players comply to those rules. And
yeah, you are in my position now. I'm making people play the game. So now you're making people play the game. But what rules do you put in place so that they both don't think that defecting is a good idea? They both think that cooperation is a good idea, and they end up cooperating.
If you defect, then you get nothing. That will be like my first rule.
Absolutely, and you've gotten it right. So what I will do in that case is that, let us say I put, and I would not give it to a bureaucrat, because bureaucrat could come into, that's a human being, right? So you could, bureaucrat would be like, give me 0.5 apples and I'll let you go, etc., etc. Let's say I'll put a robot. Let's say I'll put an automaton. Okay, if the robot sees, let's say this happening, if the robot sees, Sarah coming out with 5 apples and Avni coming out with nothing, the robot realizes that Sarah has played defect. So the robot's eyes turn red, it rushes onto Sarah, and let's say it takes 4 apples from Sarah. All right. So if Sarah knows this, then, Sarah knows that if she plays defect unilaterally, then her payoff instead of 5 would only be 1. Okay. And similarly is the case with Avni, that if I have told the robot, and you know that I've told the robot this, that if somebody is coming out with 5 apples, that means that they have defected unilaterally. So rush onto them and take away 4 of their apples. So for you now, in your mind, before you're going, the table looks like this. The payoff structure looks like this. So now if you're here, okay, you would not want to unilaterally defect because 2.5 is better than 1. Similarly, Avni would not want to unilaterally defect because 2.5 is better than 1, right? So you have this as a Nash equilibrium as well. Abhi 2 is also an, defect is also a Nash, okay, because 2 is better than 0 and 2 is better than 0. To remedy that, what I can do is that I can further program the robot and tell the robot that if they both are coming up with 2 apples, which means that they both defected, and defection is breaking the law. So you go to them, you make this 0, you take away both their apples, and plus also give them a little electric shock. So actually make this -1. Okay. Because 0, 0, and then these 2 become equal, so you can still defect. So you make this -1. So now when this is -1, -1, this is 1, 0, 0, 1, 2.5, 2.5, you only have one Nash equilibrium in place over here. Okay, because if you're here, then 0 is better than -1, you would want to cooperate unilaterally. 0 is better than -1, Avni would want to cooperate unilaterally. But if given a chance, then both of you would want to cooperate. This becomes the Nash. Is that clear?
So essentially what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that ideally a decentralized system would work best?
No, I'm not saying that.
So for example, like Web 3.0, where we code smart contracts and we are trusting the third party, which is essentially a coded program. So if I fulfill my obligation, then the funds are released to the other party, and we are not really depending on another human being to do that. And we are just like, it's a decentralized system.
That is an important part of it, Sarah. But main thing is, how do you play with the payoffs? How do you, this particular strategy is the carrot and stick strategy. Over here, I put some sticks, right? I have put some penalties.
So, sir, like the way, essentially, like a lot of people get into smart contracts. So basically, there's a third party, which is a code. Okay, like I code a program,
and work.
I say that, you know, hey, like the moment I transfer, for example, I'm selling you my house. So if the moment I transfer my house to you, so before the moment the program is coded, you give money to the third party.
And
before
only then that program will give you the possession of the house.
Yes, the moment I transfer, the program gives me money. So, you know, from the beginning, and if I don't deliver, then the program transfers money back to you. So like that, like if when it comes to countries getting into agreements, if that's the same, I mean, then nobody would have a chance, I mean, option to defect, because they can't.
So that's one way that you could look at it, and that you would be correct. Another way is that another way to look at it is that this is the role that the government is typically expected to play, which is to, you know, in law and order situations or in situations of, dishonoring of contracts. This is what the government does, where the government is essentially saying that you did not cooperate, so I'm going to put some penalty on you. Okay. So if I'm putting some penalty on you, I'm in a way changing the payoff of this game. I'm in a way changing the rewards that you get by unilaterally defecting. I'm making this -1. I'm making this -1. And if you both defected, then I'm also making these -1. And if the role of the government is clear, that the government will enforce this. Okay, if the government will penalize you if you're not cooperating, if that's clear, then the expectation is that people will eventually cooperate, because that's the only Nash equilibrium available to them. Okay. The only challenge with the carrots and sticks approach is that a lot of times governments have limited capacity to enforce carrots and sticks. If you're talking about carrots, then it has limited incentives to distribute to people. In terms of sticks, there's only so much monitoring that the government can do given its capacity, and B, there are eventually bureaucrats or some officers who are doing this, who can, who are not robots or automatons, who could do it. So a lot of times in theory, this works very well. In practice, this is challenging, but that's the first way of creating a cooperative Nash equilibrium. Okay. The second way of, okay, go ahead.
Just one question, sir. So, but like, for example, like this has been happening for years. Okay, the way that we've grown up, we've been, this has been conditioned that, there's an inherent distrust in government authorities. Okay, no matter what your political inclination is, but even if you trust the leader, the people at the bureaucrats, there's this inherent distrust always. Okay, and then and don't you think that, even if you do theoretically reach a Nash equilibrium, there are a lot of variables that could work in your disadvantage?
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying, that this strategy is good in theory. In practice, it is quite problematic, right? Because you have to have so many things under control in order to be bringing cooperation by carrots and sticks. Okay, so what are the other strategies? That's what we're going to discuss. But go ahead.
I mean, the other strategy would simply be like switch to blockchain, and there are a lot of people monitoring it. You cannot change the code. Nobody can change the code, because you'll have to change the code for the entire chain and make everything decentralized.
Absolutely. And that's a great strategy. That's a great strategy to build equilibrium. And we are going to talk about the institutional strategy, just coming on to that. The other strategy is, infinite games. Okay. So infinite games is a strategy which is available to people. Finite games, whenever you have finite games, okay, you can always backward calculate and still be stuck in the defect equilibrium. Because let's say if you and Avni were playing this game for 4 consecutive days, okay, so on the last day, you can think that Avni might defect, okay, because she would want to maximize on the last day. So your best response to that is that you will defect on the last day as well. Okay. Now, Avni also is a rational player. We talked about the common knowledge of rationality. So Avni knows that last day the fate is sealed. Okay. So there's a lot of chance that Sara might defect on the second last day. Right. So Avni's best response on the second last day is to defect as well. Okay. And now you also, common knowledge of rationality. You know that second last day, we are both going to defect. So your best response, or you would think that Avni might defect on the third last day, and so on and so forth. You will keep defecting until day 1. All right. So you're stuck in this. But if this was an infinite game, if you were to play this game every day, until infinity, then that logic, what you were talking about, that I have to maintain my goodwill, because if I defect today, then tomorrow they will also defect. And even if you are defecting, let's say you're playing this game until infinity, your calculation would be that, okay, one day maybe you'll take an advantage where you leave with 5 and the other person leaves with 0. Okay. But from the next day onwards, you are stuck in defect forever. Okay. So your one advantage of 5 on a very long time horizon is not going to remain meaningful, because every day you could have gotten 0.5 more, but you could have gotten 2.5, you're getting 2. So after 10 days, this gap is already covered. And then from the 11th day onwards, you're in the red, you're in loss. Okay. So in infinite games, you can, play cooperative games. Now, in practice, a lot of times you don't need infinite games. Even if you break it down into stages, it works very well. And I'll show you how that happens. I think we'll be able to cover only 3 strategies. There are 4 strategies because we are running out of time and I have a hard stop at 7. So for the 4th strategy, join our fellowship. This strategy, so look at it this way. Let's say there's a line of control, there's one army on the other side. Okay. Now, even if you happens in real life as well, you never ask. Am I audible, guys? I get a message. Can you hear me?
Yes, now, yes.
Okay, I'm audible, right? Perfect.
Yes.
Cool. So I am not going to ask the 2 parties to de-escalate immediately. Like, they don't have to go all of the way to de-escalate. I'm going to first ask them to declare that they intend to de-escalate, and knowing very well that words mean nothing. Okay. But then I'm to de-escalate, by, let's say, just 1 kilometer, or maybe just half a kilometer, something which is not too much of a cost. Okay. Something that the other party might be willing to risk a little bit. Okay. Now, if both of them have withdrawn 1 kilometer each, they know that if the other party wants to cheat and grab the land that I have moved away from, then they would want to rush back. But that also gives me an equal opportunity to rush back quickly and re-establish an equilibrium. Okay. But if the other party doesn't rush back, then we have some trust established between each other. If we have established between each other, then maybe I can ask both the parties at 3 kilometers this time. All right. And the same logic applies that this part wants to cheat, they will rush back to occupy the ceded territory over here. I also have opportunity to rush equilibrium. And gradually we can keep de-escalating and eventually just move out of the territory. Okay, so that's practically that's one way of doing it. A lot of times what can also happen in such things is that you could be in sort of a pendulum that sometimes you're de-escalating, sometimes you're escalating. What happens with countries like India, Pakistan, right? And you look at history, you look at France and England, they were the worst of enemies forever. Okay, but from the modern times, medieval times, they were the worst of enemies. Modern times, they've been the best of friends, because they realize that they are in an infinite game with each other. Nobody can completely destroy the other entity to exist. And I also think that even with our countries over here, let's say India and Pakistan, somewhere in our hearts of hearts, both the parties think that we'll be able to destroy the other entity from being that, maybe divide it up or occupy or destroy, whatever. They think that about us, we think that about them somewhere, and we are not therefore mentally in an infinite game. The moment you think that this other entity is always going to remain. See, Russia attacked Ukraine because Russia thinks that there could be a time where Ukraine can cease to exist. Okay, but if you are in a position where you realize that the other entity will still exist, whatever you do, then you can come in an infinite sort of game. Okay, so essentially this other strategies, infinite games, or break it down into stages. It also works in corporate contracts. It also works in when you're talking about laws. So let's say if there's a river and there are 3 factories over here which throw pollutants into the river and it's banned, instead of telling them that you spend 1 crore rupees setting up a waste treatment plant and we will check with you after 1 year, you need to break it down into various stages. It'll work much better, because right now, what will factory owner one think that what if I invest 1 crore rupees in this waste treatment plant and the other 2 they don't, then I will have either my product becomes more expensive or I have reduced my profit. So I go out of business, or relatively I become weak. And these 2 people are still polluting the river. So, the river is also polluted. So I'm not going to do that, whatever the government says. The second and third people are thinking exactly the same thing. But if you break it down into stages, stage 1 is that you get them to sign an agreement, declare publicly that we are going to do that. Stage 2, make them make a very minimal, almost a costless sort of a investment, that okay, just leave some space to set up this plant. Okay, and when all 3 of them know that if factory 1 knows that 2 and 3 have also left some space, then factory 1 is assured that they will also take the second step. The second step would be to, let's say, set up the pipeline and maybe spend a few more lakhs on that. Now, in the expectation that the others will do it, I will do it myself. And gradually you get them to invest stage by stage and you'll have the waste treatment plant there. So a lot of times, you see that in COP, and you see that in international agreements as well. A lot of times we get impatient that it's super slow and they're all just making declarations. But typically, first step is declaration. Then the next step is make some small sacrifices. And then once everybody knows that the other person is also willing to make small sacrifices, they are not free riders. They can, make even bigger and bigger sacrifices. All right. So that's the second strategy. The third strategy is the institutional strategy. All right. The institutional strategy is that, let's say, we have a situation where you have 100 fishes in a pond. People only survive on fishes, 5 households around a pond. Okay. And which means that each person to survive has 20, can have 20 fishes in a week. All right. Each household. Okay. But typically what happens is that when nobody's seeing, I'm feeling more hungry, or if I have more guests, no, sorry, before that, there is a rule that the threshold is 50 fishes in a week. If you are only fishing 50 fishes, then the next week fishes will reproduce, you'll have 100 again. If you go below 50, then their population balance gets disturbed. So next week you'll have fewer fishes, another week fewer, and 1 week you'll have no fishes at all. Okay, it has a limited regenerative capacity. So a lot of times what will happen is that ideally every household should have only just 10 fish every week so that you don't go below the 50 mark. But a free rider might just withdraw more than 10 fishes and disturb the equilibrium because nobody is watching. Okay, so what international institutions would typically do is that in international institutions, you must have heard about, even in global peace and security, you would hear this phrase called rule-based order. So you set up certain rules. So let's say you set up a rule over here that I am building this wooden plank here, okay, and only fishing from this wooden plank is allowed. If you're fishing from anywhere else, this is illegal. All right. Now, what I also do is that I create a council of one representative from each of these families. Okay, I create a council over here and I ask them to monitor the fishes and display it publicly. Okay, monitor the fish that each of the household is collecting on any given day of the week. So, let's say household 1 collects 10 fishes. Let's say household 2 collects 11 fishes in a particular week. Then that the third person has to automatically consume a little less. Then the next week, this third person can trade. The next week, the third person can say that last week you got more, give it to me. If this person is not giving it to him, then the others can just gang up on this person and eventually, ask them to sacrifice. So this creates a self-governing mechanism. So if you're talking about UN and some of these systems where you cannot have, like, UN does not have a super government that can enforce its laws on any other government. So what it does is that it creates certain rules and it makes information available to everyone. It bridges information asymmetry. Okay. And what's important is that for this self-governing system to work, you need to have a rule-based order. You need to have transparency of information. And what you cannot have are 2 different bodies. The moment you have 2 different bodies, one telling you different number of fishes, another telling you different number of fishes, then you're in a soup. Like blockchain, again, if there are 3 different types of algorithms to choose from, okay, then you're in a soup. Like if there's no global standard on how on a particular type of agreement, what should be the algorithm like, okay, then you have a problem because different types of algorithms are telling you different things. So you need to have one particular system of rules. Also, you need to have a lot of trust in the algorithm, or you need to have a lot of trust in this council, which is actually recording the numbers. Because if you don't trust in their caliber or you don't trust in their character, both of them are problematic. Because if you have no trust in their character, you come to a situation like WHO, where it was rabidly, aggressively defending its reputation, because they fear that if they lose their reputation, nobody is going to believe in the reports that they're publishing, the numbers that they're publishing. And if there's no belief in the numbers which are being published, then people are again going to start overfishing and the whole system will run out of fish one day. So it's important to have trust in the character and the capacity of this council or the institution or the algorithm to be reporting the numbers correctly. Okay, so that's the institutional strategy. All right, now since we are out of time, I'll just tell you the other strategy is, the last strategy is to make cooperation really, really lucrative, where even if I am the only one cooperating and the other side is defecting, I'm still better off than defecting myself. That is the 4th strategy. As to how that works, there's a number of calculations. I'm not getting into that. But what we have learned today is there are 4 strategies of bringing Number one is cooperation is important for any country. Laws cannot themselves bring about cooperation. You need, some sort of change in payoffs or change in strategies to bring about cooperation. And there are 4 ways to do it. One is the carrot and stick approach, which has its limitation. All 4 of them have their limitations. Okay, so it's, a lot of times you need to use them in combination as well, or use them for the right thing at the right time, depending on the context. Number 1 is carrot and stick. Number 2 is infinite games, or break games into various stages. Number 3 is this institutions, which means rules and making information available transparently. And the 4th is make cooperation really, really lucrative. So that's the end of my lecture. I hope this was useful. And whenever you want, you can, I would encourage you to visit our website, that is www.gpods.org. This is the Global Policy, Diplomacy and Sustainability Fellowship. As you can see, the mentors who are going to be guiding you are judges from various places. They are, top people in global trade, members of parliament, people from the UN. So we have had the UN Assistant Secretary General, people from NATO, people from UNEP, ministers from different countries. You'll be able to see all of them. You'll be able to take a few courses as well. You see a lot of ambassadors who come and teach as well. You'll be able to take 3 courses in comparative public administration. That's a 20-hour course that I deliver. There's another course on global commons, and there's a course on international policy and diplomacy. So 3 courses that you have. You learn with a bunch of really talented fellows. So your peers are people literally from all over the world. You can see this is our current cohort. People from different backgrounds, from different countries, from different job experiences. So we really create almost an Ivy League sort of a program for 3 months. And once you're part of this, once you've completed one fellowship, you can, let's say a mentor, you attended spring 2021 and you talked to a number of mentors. Some mentors in the spring 2020, in the summer 2021 may be different, and you can still attend their lectures of any mentor in the future for no extra cost. So once you are a fellow, you can attend any of the cohorts or network with any of the mentors in the future. So that's the idea behind GPODS. Our first application deadline is April 15th, which is early application, and it has more of a admissions rate. And our second application deadline is May 15th. So I encourage you to check this out, and I hope to remain in touch. You can add me on LinkedIn, and I'm extremely accessible over there. And again, I thank GNLU for having me over. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.